Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yes, perfect. Okay, thank you so much, Jamie, for that introduction. And thank you, everyone, for being here. So you've seen it on the chat, but this session is going to be interactive. Nothing too intimidating, but the idea is that we're going to show how to run online events that aren't just top-down sessions, and so how you can interact with your participants. So for that, we're looking for up to 20 people to have essentially their little face on the screen. We'll do some movement things together. So feel free to write in the chat if you're interested. And otherwise, so I can see the chat right now. Where are you calling in from? Curious if you can write your city, what country you're in. All right, Dubai, San Jose, Chicago, London. Wow, all over. And what kind of events do you need to do online? So are you here because you're looking to do big conferences? Do you have team meetings? Your family dinner at a distance? Okay, trade shows, interesting. Customer meetups, team meetings, pretty varied. And for now, what are your challenges if you've already started doing online events, like I imagine? What's not going as well as you would like it to? Okay. Time zones, enrollment, moving away from Zoom, planning, offline to online. Yes, intimidated by participation, definitely know that one. Okay, great. So we'll try to talk about some of that. And Jamie, if we could get people added into the session, we can go ahead and start interacting soon. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and officially welcome you in and start my screen. Welcome to everyone who's joining. Hi, Tim.
Hey,
and so all of you joining in, good. How about you?
Very good.
It's very sunny. Could I just ask you for now to put your microphone on mute so I can also do that for you? Yeah, I got it. And so we'll interact a little bit later. Welcome, Travis. And for now, I'll just keep you on mute so there's no echoes for everybody. Yes. All right. So I'm screen sharing now. Yes, it should be up there now. And so everyone needs to double click on the slides if you want to see my slides. Just want to check if it's good for you. If you double click, can you see them bigger? And you should see our small faces next to it. Yeah. Okay. So my name is Rachel, as Jamie said, and I work for an organization called Make Sense. And so Make Sense is a global community that's existed for 10 years. We were started essentially as a citizen movement. And so we never had a lot of resources, essentially money to work with. And so that meant that we didn't have a lot of big fancy offline. We've pretty much always had to do a lot of video calls for people to stay connected around the world. We also have a distributed team, meaning that we're in 6 different cities. This is one of our rare events in person, but that only happens once a year. So obviously we've never spent so much time remote, but we have done a lot of video calls of various forms. And so time zones, yes, people speaking different language, all sorts of challenges, and also how do you keep events online interesting has been something that we've had to deal with for the past years. And so I actually really like doing online calls. I think Jamie mentioned it, but it is a constraint. I miss people, I miss hugging people, but at the same time, I do think there's a lot you can do with online calls and actually make it a really fun format. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. My 2 goals is that I hope you're going to learn concrete tips so that for your next event, whether it's tonight, tomorrow, you can plug it in directly. And I also hope that this will be a fun event since I know we spend a lot of time on the computer, so I hope to make it as interesting as possible. Welcome to those who are joining on the screen. Just going to ask you to mute your microphone, and Jamie, if you can help with that, that'd be perfect. And so yes, speaking of which, a few quick rules. So if you are joining us on the screen, thank you for your bravery. I'll ask you to keep your mic muted when you're not speaking, to keep your video on so we can see you, and for everybody, please write in the chat because we'll be also interacting that way. And so for our call, we're going to be going through a type of structure that you can use for some of your calls, while also going through some best practices and different ideas to make your calls a bit more interesting. And so actually what we just saw now, to take a step back and go to the kind of meta point of view, is an official start. And this, I do consider this a step in doing an online event, and it might sound, I'd say, a little bit silly, but it's often something we skip where we don't know that we're actually starting. So when I'm saying official start, I mean to say we've started, to welcome people for being there, list the objectives of the call. So if you feel like you've got concrete tips, but you don't necessarily know each other well, that's okay, because you've understood that these are the objectives of the call. And to show what the call is going to look like, kind of like a you are here chart, so you're able to follow what's happening and you've got your expectations set. And we've actually already seen another phase of this call, which I call chit chat. So you've all had a lot of Zooms, a lot of Hangouts recently. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but there's sometimes this awkward phase of when the first people arrive and we're waiting for the others. And oftentimes we're just on mute, and then someone will unmute themselves and say, hey, is anyone here? Can you hear me? You know what I'm talking about, the kind of awkward phase. And so I put a flight attendant here because it's like arriving on a plane. You're waiting for somebody to welcome you warmly, to tell you this is the flight to Dallas, you know you're in the right place. It's like an offline event. There's a welcome booth, there's someone there to greet you. And so while people are joining, they're figuring out how to use Zoom, don't hesitate to ask, hey, I see Martin's just joined. Where are you joining us from, Martin? Nice to see you. If you want to put on your camera, click on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. So that way you make people feel comfortable, you can ask them questions, chat around, help them to use your tool. And we always like to start events with icebreakers. And I saw that question in the chat. I was just on a call earlier where we started with an icebreaker. There were 35 people. And so they had everyone go around and introduce themselves. As you can imagine, for the hour that I was on that call, we only introduced ourselves. And I think that's a common mistake we can make because it's a familiar icebreaker that we know, but there are a bunch of other things we can do. In this picture, you see an example team where we had everybody grab the nearest blue thing in sight, and we took a picture of blue objects together. We've got a minion, a pair of scissors, a scarf. It's a purely entertainment focused and energizer one. And so I'm gonna unshare my screen. Yes, okay, perfect. So we should all be able to see the different people on screen. Hello to everyone here. So could I ask everybody, if you're on screen, just to use your fingers, and if you're in the chat, to write in the chat, either way totally works. Can I ask everybody, how long have you been under confinement? If you're confined, how many weeks? Can you show me with your fingers? And write in the chat. All right, we've got 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Well, it's getting long. 5 weeks, we've got to count. We're not so sure. I'm at 6. Okay, 40 days. And how many people are you confined with in your house? I've got 4, 2, 3, 0. What's the biggest number we have? Do we have any 8? Sometimes I have 8. Okay, 6. Wow, different numbers. So for the people of 0 people, thank you for being here. I think we'll have a nice interactive session. If you have 6 people or 4 and a dog, like I see from Tanya, if your dog runs in, if people run in, it's completely fine. My 5-year-old niece has run in on one of these trainings. There's things we can't control, and it's completely okay. And the people on chat, can you show me an activity that you like to do during confinement? So same thing. If you're in the chat, write in the chat something that you like to do during confinement. And if you are live on video, can I have you essentially mime it, like charades? So for example, I've been reading a lot. Do we have any other activities? Yeah, we've got wine, reading. Ruth is cooking, I think. Sewing, Julia's working, hopefully on fun things. Okay, eating. Yes, eating is a great activity. Perfect. And as one last thing before I reshare my slides, I'd like to ask everybody, and if you're on the chat, this applies to you too. You've probably been on calls all day, whether it's this event or something else, and all week, and the past 5 or 6 weeks, however long you've been in confinement. So could I ask everyone to just put your arms in the air and stretch up. Now I'm going to ask you to stretch to the right. And breathe in. Exhale to the left. Breathe in. And a big circle with your arms. Okay, thank you for our little stretch. So this was a very quick icebreaker. There's a lot of ones you can do. We have a lot of people who are watching this session or connected right now. But I just wanted to do a quick example of something you can do that's not going around one by one. And typically, if you have even 20 people plus, it can be nice to do something that's happening at the same time. So movement and hand gestures responding to questions. For example, how long have you been part of this company? Could be a type of activity you can do. I've seen ones where you put on music and people do a dance together. You can do the stretching activity, but then I'll say, all right, Tim, now you do a stretch. And then he'll lead us in a stretch and pass the baton on to someone else. So feel free to get a little bit creative, and it's okay if not everybody speaks. And actually, when you're doing an icebreaker, there's several questions to ask yourself. I see that you're stretching at midnight. That's perfect. Anytime is a good time for a stretch. So what makes a good icebreaker? Necessarily, I would say universal truth, but it depends on what you're trying to do. So yeah, oh, my screen. So once again, if you just joined the call, when you see my slides, just double click on them. Yes. And so for that, in terms of considerations for icebreakers, one thing is your objectives. So here my objective with these icebreakers, it was twofold. One was to energize you a little bit, because I see for Pixie that it's 3 a.m. in Malaysia. For Yashraj, it's midnight in India. For you, you've probably been on the computer a lot, so just to energize you. And a second objective was to show you the types of icebreakers that are possible. Your objective is to get people to know each other. Your objective might be to introduce a specific topic. So the icebreaker you would do would vary depending on that. A second consideration is the number of people. Of course, if there's 2 of you, 5 of you, doing longer icebreakers, having every person speak is much more feasible than right now. I see there's 129 of us. So that might get a little bit challenging and we'd be here. And another question is your culture. Right here, this is a 2-day online retreat that we ran with our global team in January. As you might see, if you look closely, some people have goggles or soccer shirts on. We had an Olympics-themed event. And so we started with a virtual opening torch ceremony. So everyone took a torch on their phone, they passed it to someone else. We also did different stretches and competition exercises. I would say, ask yourself, does this fit with the culture of my enterprise, the culture of my community? Appropriate or potentially not appropriate. One icebreaker that I really like for connection, if you're trying to get people to know each other, is virtual show and tell. Welcome to those who joined us. Please mute your mic. I'm going ahead and muting you now. Yes. So you might have done this activity in school where you bring in an object or a pet and you introduce it to the class. I've actually done that on online calls, and that can be really nice if you want to bring people into your world. Because we're working from home, like we said, your kid might run in the room. It's nice to feel a little bit more comfortable with it. So I did that with the community. And what was great was people saying, well, here's my husband, here's my kid. And it's a community where we really felt like a family. And so we were happy to show each other, to show our husband, this is my community, these are my people, and I've been talking to them for months. And to have them know each other a little bit. But it could be a little bit less intimate. You could say, this is my favorite mug of tea, I'm addicted to tea and drink 10 cups a day. So just to show possibilities for icebreakers. So now we're going to take a step back and talk about preparation, because we're not going to do that live during the call and instead assume that I've prepared. And the good news is I have. And so what do you have to do for preparation? Well, I'd go back to this question of objectives, because I think it's really essential. What are you trying to get out of your online event? Because you're not going to design your event the same way. Hopefully you do this for offline events, for team meetings. Why are you doing this in the first place? And for you, what would success look like is always an important question. And so a question you can ask yourself is, I'd be happy at the end of this event if. Are you looking for a certain number of people? Is that your best indicator? Or are you looking for something to be produced? You're trying to create a document together. Are you looking for a number the next event, or who decide to sign up for your ambassador program? Once again, the structure will be different. Your goal might be to inspire your community. It might give people a morale boost. Your event might be designed around learning. There's a lot of options. And so I invite you to write your objectives in the chat. So the idea of this session is it's a workshop. Unfortunately, I can't give everybody canvases. We can't really work one-on-one, but just to write down your reflections. It can be in the chat if it's useful for you, or wherever you'd like. And then we'll talk about how your different objectives can lead you to design your event differently. So it could be multiple, of course: learning, morale boost, connecting, connection. And so these different types of objectives can lead us to design our event differently. And there's 4 main different types of events, at least I would say, in terms of, I had a friend get married over Zoom, so there's a lot of type of online events, but we're not going to talk about that right now. There's top-down events, so that's where one person speaks to the others, like an inspirational speaker, like a webinar. But there's a lot else, and typically I think most people are familiar with top-down events. There's workshops, so interactive events where we're trying to build something together, bonding or connection events, and discussion-based events. And after. There's the whole logistical side, so choosing your tool, booking it, notifying people. I'm going to not go through that right now because I think there's a lot more resources that exist online. What I'd like to focus on during this right now, this workshop, is rather the experience that we create online, because I haven't found as how to make an online event that's actually interesting versus how do you choose Zoom or Google Hangouts. And so for preparation, preparing your participants. You can see in this photo that everybody has their video off and maybe weren't ready to join a call that was a little bit more participatory, but helping your participants be prepared can really help your call. So there's the basic things like trying to make sure they have a good internet connection, that they're in a quiet place. Right now in confinement, a lot's out of our control, so that's okay. But I want to specifically focus on, so the last 2 emojis are referring to getting people to pay attention. There wasn't a good one that I could find, so I put a student. And getting people excited. Once again, if you've just joined, because I have people joining, just double click on my slides. It's the one little square person, and you'll see them bigger. So how do you get people to pay attention and to be more present? So opening remarks this morning, he said something about this too. To try to be present, not to be on email, because if you're in 2 places at once, you're probably not really paying attention. So we've done several things on our team and our community events, our retreats. One is for a team retreat, because this one was really important to have people focused. We asked people to download an app. This app is called Forest, and essentially the way it works is if you don't touch your phone, as long as you don't touch your phone, you see a little virtual tree grow, donates money to build real trees. And so it motivates you to not touch your phone, and we'll set a timer to get contest to see how many trees we plant. There are other versions that are similar, but the idea is to make it a little bit fun, but also incentivize people and remind them that we're only going to be on this call for 1 hour. We'll have a break after. And during this time, we're asking you to turn your phone upside down, put it in the other room, download an app, do something to focus. This picture makes me anxious just looking at it. If you double click on that picture with all of the tabs. But how do you get people to focus and not jump between email? Something that we did for different online events is we did what we called a ceremonious closing of the tabs. So we put on some music, we made it like a ritual, and ceremoniously we had everybody say goodbye to all of their tabs, thank their tabs. they could copy and paste them in another window, but we didn't start until we could screen share and we knew those tabs were closed. We obviously didn't have 130 people, but it helped us be really focused with a little touch of fun. Another important thing is to get people excited. Look, we wanted to do this event in person. Sucks that we're online, but we'll make it okay. Versus, you know what, we've tested the format. It's actually going to be really fun. We have a bunch of surprises. We can't wait to see you, like CMX did. It will help people arrive more interested to participate. So an Olympics retreat that I mentioned, and this is an email we sent, T-minus 4 days, 3 hours, and 8 minutes for the games of your lives. Once again, ask yourself about your organization or community's culture and what seems appropriate. But we were preparing people regularly, including with a series of absurd photoshopped pictures. And by the time they joined the call, they were actually really pumped to be there. And so I see some ideas in the chat. Maybe you've tried something that's also about getting people excited, getting them to pay attention. Please feel free to share your tips in the chat because it's hard to interact with everybody at once, but I'd love to see them. And if there's anything you want to try, please write it as well. And so all of this and what we're going to see in the next 20 minutes of this workshop is focused on the participant experience. And this is like user experience, UX, like anything. Put yourself in the shoes of a participant and think what's going to be fun for them, what's likely dreadfully boring. And if we're feeling a certain way, the participants likely are. So if you've been on a call for 4 hours and you really need to pee, probably the people on screen really need to pee as well. Walkthrough beforehand can help you realize, wow, we've had one person speaking for 2 hours. I think we're going to need to break this up a little bit. And so we're going to go through more examples of designing a good participant experience after this. And so speaking of which, I'm going to cut my screen share because I've been sharing my screens for a little bit. So that should be gone. Yes, perfect. And so for the people on screen, on chat, I'm going to ask you just to do a little bit of face stretching. I would say face yoga, but I'm not a certified face yoga teacher. So I did this on a previous call. You stretch your chins a little bit. A little forehead massage. And you can stretch your forehead up and down. I won't have you do anything weirder because this call is recorded. Okay, better? Yes. And now I'd like to ask you to close your eyes. And so everybody, also, if you're watching the live stream in the chat, could you close your eyes? Yes. And I'd like you to picture that we're at your event. So whether it's your online conference, your networking session, your family reunion, you've organized it and it's going incredibly well. People are really happy. There's no technical glitches. You're having so much fun that you're thinking, I think I'm going to organize all of my events online forever. Maybe not that, but you're still really happy with it. You got great feedback after. You're feeling super confident. And now I want you to hold that feeling and you can open your eyes, whether you're on video or not. Know that your event will go well. And we did that mini exercise because this is a short workshop, but because I think that whether it's meditation, stretching, face yoga, whatever you want to do, it's nice to break up online events because I haven't on this, it's just purely intuitive. I get the sense that we have a much shorter attention span online. Maybe I'm speaking purely for myself. I think I have a shorter attention span online. Even a session that's 40 minutes, like this one is, it can be nice to just cut your screen share or your monologue, because I know I can talk a lot, and then say, oh wow, yeah, here we are. Do something a little physically oriented. It can be a little bit silly. Meditation or visualization, I think would be more accurate, can be nice if you're, let's say, redefining your community's purpose or values, You're doing a retrospective about what's happened this past year. So it can be nice to let people really connect to how they're feeling about a certain experience. And of course, there's plenty of other things you can do. You can define a jingle of your event. We had a series of events around cooking. It wasn't symbolically around cooking. And so we'd put ambient cafe music or little knife cutting noises at the beginning of our calls, and as little transitions. You can have people sing together, they can dance together. So once again, double click on my slides if you want to see those bigger. Stretching, you can have them do the wave. That's why you can do a little wave together. You can also, if you have a specific signal for your community, that's something you can do all together. We once we had someone with a violin who played different songs for the people on the event, and they had to guess what song it was. It was just 4 minutes, but it really woke everybody up. And by the time we came back to what the material was, people were pretty happy and pumped up. And then the visualization exercises. As hard as timing is off, yes, I wouldn't recommend trying to do a chorus with everybody on Zoom. I mean, it would be funny, but it wouldn't necessarily be beautiful. If you're switching between cameras and making a sound, it can be entertaining. With transitions, I'm more looking to keep good energy rather than produce a beautiful musical result. So I'd say it depends what your objective is. If it's a singing class, maybe you are looking for a beautiful musical result. Is this suitable for 300 plus people? It depends what you're doing, but I would say yes. So for example, to ask you to close your eyes and visualize something, of course, I can't tell for everyone that I can't see if you're actually closing your eyes, but at least I'm inviting you to do something a little bit different. And so I would say some sort of transition, I would highly recommend it, no matter how big your call is. If there's something that you've tried that could be a good transition, please write it in the chat, because I love discovering other ideas. And so now let's say you have a clear purpose, objectives for your call, you've invited people, you've prepared them, you're excited, they're excited, they show up, you chit chat and you welcome them properly, you start your call, you have a great icebreaker, you have your transitions. Maybe now you're asking the question, okay, great, but what do I actually do who are on my call? And that's a very good question. So we're going to talk about the main heart of your call. And I would start by saying, I think it depends on the type of online event you're looking to have. So top-down workshop, bonding, or discussion. Top-down, I don't really want to say much about it because I think they're the events we're the most familiar with. You have one person speaking. And this event, obviously, I am speaking. I'm the one speaking here, but that's largely a constraint in terms of timing. And as I mentioned at the beginning, my goal of this call is to really help you get concrete tips to try rather than for you to connect. That being said, if you are having a top-down call, you've probably noticed that I've been switching between sharing my slides and not sharing my. So it's less important on Hopin, and this is the first time that I'm using Hopin, because you can still see everyone's faces next to the slides. But typically, if you're on Zoom or Google Hangouts, for example, it can quickly, I would say, become a little bit dull to spend too much time looking at slides or too much time looking at people. And I think it's just nice to break up one specific type of activity. And whenever someone doesn't have slides, cut the screen share, because I think it's always more interesting to see each other. And I think it helps people pay attention. Feel free to try a live stream platform if you want to have as much control as possible, because it's always possible that somebody unmutes their microphone and starts talking to their son in the other room, and then everybody's overhearing their conversation, and it gets a little bit weird for everybody. So if you want as much control as possible, and this is a tool called Be Live that I think is really nice, but there's a lot of them. But it depends if you want interaction with your participants or not. So we're going to move on to workshops, because I think that one is a little more interesting and underutilized. So you might know Breakout Rooms. This is a feature of Zoom. We can't do it here on Hopin, or else I would break you all up into rooms because it's always more fun to try it. But what's nice is you can have up to 50 rooms. And what that means concretely, I'll show you on this slide. So double click my slides if you want to see it, is that the 6 of us in this photo are in one room. Other people are seeing each other on the screen, but in a different place. And what me as a moderator, I see this little panel here on the right. So I can see who's in what room. I can rearrange them, and I can even send a message like the all-knowing big brother to everybody in the room, telling them to come back, sending them a question prompt. And so in a workshop, your main consideration is how to get people to collaborate. So here I see there's 160 people watching this session. So if I wanted everybody to create an agenda for a big community conference with 160 people, it would just be quasi impossible. But if I divided you into groups of 10, so 16 groups of 10, it would suddenly become more workable. But if I were doing that, the challenge might be that I wouldn't be in all 16 of those rooms. So what you want to think about is making the exercise as clear as possible for people. So making sure that one person in each room is the facilitator, somebody is a note taker, and somebody is a timekeeper. That's always one of the biggest challenges. It can be someone from your team or an audience member or participant. And for that, you can just create a little document that describes how to facilitate or clear. Canvases or templates can be great, essentially a note-taking document, because the clearer your instructions are, the more likely that your workshop is going to be successful, because people understand what's expected of them. And you can also use different tools. So I see Kahoot is mentioned in the chat. MindMeister, yes, Google Forms, Google Docs. Here, this is a picture of a tool called Mural, where you can essentially arrange and write on virtual Post-its. So feel free to play with different tools as well. But we often use simple Google documents, Word documents, so you don't need a specific tool to be able to collaborate well. I would say, as usual, participant experience, how do you give them clear instructions, small enough groups that they can really interact, enough time to make it possible, and a clear goal, collaboration becomes a lot more feasible. And I see different ideas being shared on the chat, which is great. So for bonding events, when I say bonding, I just mean events where your goal is for people to get to know each other better. So there's a lot you can do. There's tools that you can use, and there's also tools that you can create. So I saw people mention this here. They're also demoing at this conference. Icebreaker, icebreaker.video is a great tool that matches people one-on-one. It gives them a virtual deck of cards with questions for them to get to know each other and to ask each other questions. We've used it for a bunch of different settings, and it's always gone really well. But we'll also make up stuff for our different events. So this is an activity that we called Love Letters. We made it on PowerPoint. And the idea was that each team member who was on our online retreat had a specific letter. It started empty. And throughout the retreat, during breaks, we encouraged people to go to that person's letter and to write nice comments. So as you can tell, we love Evelyn. And by the end of the retreat, Evelyn and anyone else could download their letters. We downloaded them for them in PDF. And we sent it to them as part of the thank you and recap from the online event. And so that's something that's totally free. Although Icebreaker is also free to test during this current period. So feel free to get creative, like I mentioned. Themes, I've talked to you about our Olympic Day online event. What was nice about this is that having a theme allowed us to get more ideas, like the opening torch ceremony that I mentioned. We had people dress up and divided them into teams. So you can see that we've got the swim team, the multiple people with goggles here. And it was something nice to play with. Our jingle, we had the Olympic music, which added a nice dramatic flair. And so on the note of teams, doing longer online events, this can be an interesting option. The idea is that people had teams through the duration of the event. And so they had to do certain things together, and we'd give them points. So if everyone from your team arrives online for a session, congratulations for your team. If you take the best online photo, if you're wearing the best costume, and yes, costumes can be fun depending on your culture. And so last but not least, discussions. So I'm going to stop my screen share once again. And as usual, I want us to just test something together. So we've been confined for weeks, as we've mentioned. Personally, I just finished watching my latest TV show, and I'm kind of sad because I have no more episodes left. And so I'd love if everyone could write on the chat, what is your current TV show recommendation? No judgment. Just what would you recommend me to watch right now? Okay, Ozark's come up twice, 3 times, Westworld, Survivor, Jane the Virgin. Okay, getting good options here. Feel free to copy and paste these notes if you're also looking for tips. And now for people who are sharing, if you could just add a line onto why you like this show. And the people who are here on video with us, I'd love one person, if you could share, it could just be 1 line or 2 lines, why you like your show with the rest of us. So just think for a minute if you're willing to share. The stakes are not very high. You're just telling us about a TV show. For eternal glory, is there someone who would be willing to pitch their TV show live? And if so, could you just raise your hand? Jeremy, yes, also hello. Yeah, go ahead. Jeremy, we can't hear you. Is your mic on? Oh, it seems like it's not working for now, and I really wanted to hear the pitch. Could you write it in the chat? And in the meantime, is there someone else from the visible group who would be willing to pitch their TV show?
I'm watching, I was torn between the Michael Jordan documentary and Little Fires Everywhere. Yes, Marissa, but I'll go with Little Fires Everywhere. It's on Hulu, and it's just super easy. I was looking for something mindless. I do want to watch Ozark, but it's like, I got to commit to all 3 seasons. There's only a couple episodes of it, and it has good acting. The book is really, really great, and it's just easy if you're just looking for something mindless to spend a little time on.
Easy sounds perfect. Thank you so much, Marissa. So as a bonus for this session, I hope that you all have good TV show recommendations in case that the online event tips weren't useful. But no, the reason that I'm doing this exercise is just to show you a way that you can help facilitate the conversation online. There's usually challenges. The first is that people are not comfortable speaking online. It can be an uncomfortable exercise when you're not used to it, and you'll likely have people on your call who are less used to online events than you are. And also that there's too many people. So time, making sure there isn't one person monopolizing this, the mic, and getting people warmed up. That's what this little exercise guy is. So I think about it as kind of a pathway to warming people up. You can, I'll give you 30 seconds to think about the best TV show of your life. This one didn't need that much warm up because it's not the subject where the stakes are the highest. The second thing is to write on the chat. That's a little bit less intimidating. The third thing is you can raise your hand if you're interested. And the fourth thing is share out loud. There's plenty of other ways to do that. But oftentimes we'll start a call and say, all right, so Anna, tell us about this. And Anna's thinking, why me? What did I do? I'm not ready. I don't know what to say. And so this helps make the exercise a little bit less uncomfortable. There are plenty of other techniques too, but just in the interest of time, I want to make sure I move us through the end. And with all of that, so the 4 different types of events, the breakout rooms, the roles, the love letters, if there's something that you want to try in your event, feel free to note it down. The last thing I want to mention is about the role of the facilitator. And so as a facilitator on the call, things can go wrong. I've had really unexpected things happen in my call, like my 5-year-old niece who announced to 100 people that she was happy to meet my friends, despite me trying to keep her out of the room. And as long as you can stay calm and navigate it, it's okay. Everything. But I think one of the main roles is to just show the energy that you want people to have. So if you've ever been to a workout class, if you've been to a Zumba class, usually a high energy teacher, usually it's because they know that if they show up like, yeah, we're gonna dance, no one's gonna be more excited than them. And so you don't have to be over the top excited if it doesn't feel natural. But if you want people to be present, you have to be present. If you want people to be excited, you have to be excited. And so just try to feel calm, prepared, and put yourself in the energy that you want your participants to show. So yes, one left, and that's all I wanted to say. If there's one message, I'd say focus on the participant experience. And I'd love you to write in the chat in one word a takeaway you have, and in one word how you're feeling. And just to mention that it makes sense, we have a lot of different online events that are completely on what we call Make Sense TV, and so you're totally welcome to join us for any of those. And I'm going to stop my screen share because it's no longer relevant. I hope you got some good ideas for your workshops and TV shows. Thank you, Jamie.